Hello and welcome to Week in One. I am Avi Wemtila. Now, Week in One brings you the top news stories and interviews that you may have missed on eNCA over the past 7 days. Now, let's take a look at this week's top stories. Mixed reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's power plan. Weeks later, the police are still battling to make arrests following the spate of Tavern shootings in Gauteng. And as the African National Congress counts down to its policy conference, Professor JJ Tabane takes the bull by the horns. Now let's start here, where after a decade of unreliable electricity, the government has finally taken a more hands-on approach. The president outlined his energy plan this week and ensured South Africans that these steps would limit rolling power cuts. But this was met with mixed reaction from business and unions alike.
MF will disrupt, let me tell you, true legal processes. Any plans of anyone who thinks that transformation, employment equity must be put at bay because we have an energy crisis.
The coalition of the excluded have not been consulted.
The president, before he made this announcement, there was some kind of consultation on what they were planning. There are issues that we appreciate.
Different but pointed views following the president's address and set of actions to expel the country's energy crisis. Saftu believes the president's intervention is a way to fast-track the privatization of Eskom.
This is a long-term plan that have been started by the ANC government in 1997, which reminds us of the United States scholar Noam Chomsky, who normally say your plan to privatize normally involves defunding an institution, making people very angry. And when people's anger is at top levels, as it is in South Africa today as a result of stage 6 load shedding, then you offer privatization as the only solution.
While the Black Management Forum welcomes the president's hands-on approach in dealing with the power crisis, it is threatening court action should transformation policies be overlooked in turning around the ailing state entity.
Our transformation policies are not policies of convenience. We do them when we feel like. These policies are meant to drive the structural recomposition of our economy. We will not excuse even Eskom at the doldrums of ourselves dying without electricity for them to go and find white matriculants that are made to be engineers.
Kusatu says while it was consulted, results are important.
If they are implemented fully and if there is resources provided enough, I think they will make a difference. And you hear me, I'm saying if and if and if, because we don't know whether that commitment is going to be fulfilled. When they go to Treasure, will Treasure be saying, look, the president have spoken, we've seen in the past the contestation between the head of state and Treasury says, and the Reserve Bank says, well, we've got also a mandate to fulfill. So we live in hopes on this thing. We think we have been in this process for too long.
Kusatu says the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Avi Wemtila, Johannesburg. Let's move on to this. It's been several weeks and police are still battling to find the criminals behind a spate of mass shootings at taverns across Gauteng. Affected communities say they live in fear while police continue the search for the gunmen. eNCA's Lindelo Masikane compiled this report.
From Katlehong in the east of Johannesburg to Lenasia, Garankuwa in Pretoria and Nomzamo in Soweto, more than 20 people have been shot dead in tavern attacks. In Nomzamo, 16 people were shot and killed execution style, and residents there say they still live in fear.
Bekufanele bathi batholakale labantu sikwazi ukuthi sibabone ukuthi obani or esizwe yayisuka phe lento abayenza babethunywe ubani.
Sifisa nje ukuthi akathi bangabantu labantu bonke bavele ngaphambi kodwa yini akahle abayifuna abantwini ngoba lento ubulwane lento asiyazi lemzathi ukuthi vele kubulawa abantu bengenza kalutho nje kahle kahle.
Wathembisa uNdosi ukuthi labantu sebeyabazi.
They have sent me the names, the list of names. They have sent me the photos of those guys. Said I don't want photos, I don't want names. I want those guys.
So I've asked Mawela, they say they are closed.
It's been days since the statement from the police minister, and there's still no signs of any arrests.
Politicians must be careful what they say about these crime scenes and not get people's hopes up. You need to manage expectations. I think that's important. One must be careful to pressure the police to have swift arrests in these very complex crimes, because then they are seen to just arrest without proper evidence. People are released. And then, it seems like no justice is done.
When asked for comment, police officials sent a message saying the provincial office would make an announcement when there's a breakthrough on the Tavern shootings. Slindelo Masigan, Johannesburg.
Now, in line with our crime syndicate focus this week, over 100 people have been arrested in the Western Cape for extortion-related crimes, including kidnapping. But some community leaders on the Cape Flats claim that people don't come forward with information because police officers are working with the criminals. Now, eNCA's Nobesutu Hejana has this inside track.
Abantu bahlala within the community already know some few of the cops are also involved in extortion. Ayonto ke elula le to deal with, and so the community doesn't have a trust more person.
People on the Cape Flats say while more officers have been brought in to fight organized crime, some officers are sabotaging operations as they are involved in these crimes. In Guguletu, a construction company that was building homes in the Luyolo development quit due to demands for a protection fee.
A lot of small businesses also afford this, but then you have some of the business people within the community that because but what they used to lose before these gangs protected them, it was greater than what they are paying now. So it's a small portion that they are paying, so at least it's safety. While you have those, I feel like the little that they are making, they have to share with somebody else.
In Makassar, community leaders say cable theft is at its peak.
It has become so bad that we are now sometimes left in darkness for days in Makassar, and it's becoming a major issue.
But Western Cape Police Commissioner Tembisile Patekile says there's progress.
In some instances, if you were not extorted, you're not being extorted, you get kidnapped for a ransom in some of those instances. So from April up to now, I think it's over 106 people that have been arrested. And many of those are in custody and some are on bail. They're out on bail on the extortion and kidnappings. But also what we're doing to prevent it, we got a team provincial forum that talks to extortions and kidnappings that sits weekly.
Police say they are also investigating some of their own members who are allegedly involved in these crimes. Nobesutu Hejana, Cape Town.
Welcome back to Week in One. I am Aviwem Tila. To the politics, where the African National Congress is holding its policy conference this weekend, eNCA's Professor J.J. Tabane hosted a robust panel discussion on power to truth in the build-up to the conference and touched on some burning issues.
We have a state capture commission that has said in no uncertain terms that Jacob Zuma was at a center of corruption for the last decade. He stole with the Guptas and his hands are dirty. And you've got a full conference singing his praises and then saying that they are going to reverse the step-aside thing. There seems to be a resistance on step-aside. Also, on another end, it seems like the step-aside, at least according to the perception of some of the branches, is being used as a political machete of some sort.
Let's start here. The issue, branches are free to raise their issues. They will come to conference. They will engage, because you would have even other provinces who are firm to say, we support the step-aside rule. So there is those, so there's a balance. There's those that understand the importance of the step-aside rule in terms of ensuring that we have a moral standing in society as an organization so that we can remove this label of corruption from the ANC. So that's important. So there is contestation of debate. As always it happens. We'll go there and debate it, but it is necessary. You can't have in the same sentence talking about renewal of the organization, but you say you don't want step-aside.
Step-aside,
It can't be in the same. In the same. Maybe let me come to the issue. Let me just conclude in this way, JJ. And similarly, in terms of the issues around our structures, where people are saying, people will have to read what we say. It's very clear. It's not saying when you are alleged as a person. It says the minute you appear before a court,
when you are
indicted, and maybe you go out on bail or you remain in custody. That's where you.
But those branches are saying that resolution mutated since 2017. That's not how it read, and it has now been mutated to say charged instead of implicated.
Remember the resolution, what the conference said is that the NEC must go and ensure that there's integrity commission that will
develop guidelines.
And develop guidelines. So that's the mandate. It was broad mandate.
Okay.
The NEC then went and said, how do we deal with it? Even in terms of that, by the way, the step-aside rule even says there must be a review, because there were discussions around what happens if I'm charged for 20 years and I never get, because people were fearing this.
It's only in the category of Zuma to be charged for 20 years.
It was discussed in the NEC, and the resolution there is very clear to say we'll review every year. NEC member or whoever that is indicted and stepped aside have a right to come back and review. To say, but look at this, nothing has happened.
All right, let me give Prof a chance there, because I believe if you are charged for 20 years, and your case continues for 20 years, like Jacob Zuma, must step aside for the whole time, because otherwise it defeats the purpose of stepping aside. But Prof, what's your view there?
Well, the step aside.
Is it a convincing thing, this step aside thing, as a way in which the ANC is, in a sense, clinching back on integrity?
Look, I don't want to belabor that, because as far as I'm concerned, it has been stepped aside. It's inconsequential.
Why do you say that?
It will never ever be materialized in any way, because the pushback is very strong. Look, for me, the ANC is so fractured that it cannot save itself from itself. I've said it then, I can repeat ad nauseum. It has reached a stage where, if it loses power, it is very likely to remain with bona fide members that can resuscitate it, renew it. But at the current moment, with the current discourse, with the so-called tripartite alliance, forget about the ANC redeeming itself.
On to our power woes, where President Cyril Ramaphosa's proposed energy plan has South Africans and energy experts talking. eNCA's eNCA, Masego Rahlaga, spoke to former Eskom CEO Jacob Maroga about his take on the president's power plan.
But tell me about Botswana and Zambia. He mentioned that he's going to allow Eskom now to procure energy from those two countries because they actually have more than what they need for their economies. And we're a country that is providing for some of our SADC region countries like your Lesotho, your Swaziland, but we can't even provide properly for South Africa at least. So is this a good plan to start procuring from these two countries, Zambia and Botswana?
Well, South Africa is interconnected into SADC in what is called the Southern African Power Pool. So from time to time, there's always trade both ways. When we have got extra, we sell to them. When they've got extra, we sell back. And then also, it's also the issues of which cycle in the day. You know, maybe they've got more in the off-peak and we can take. We've got less, so that dynamics is across. I think an interesting country is Mozambique, where they've got gas, they've got hydro, and there may be more possibilities there to sell. But it's a good thing to look at our neighbors and say, where do you have supplies? Can we buy from you, and or exchange? Yes.
On our crime focus this week, we looked at how much syndicates are costing the country. For example, the most recent data released by vehicle tracking company Tracker shows that there has been a significant spike in hijackings in South Africa. eNCA's Gareth Edwards spoke to Tracker COO Dudu.
So now when we start looking at not just the trends involved in this as well, but how South Africans need to try and handle these sort of incidents as well now. What do we do? Does the thinking around protecting yourself, does the thinking about how Tracker assists their clients, knowing there's a spike, knowing there's a change of pattern, What do you do with that as an organization? How do you educate your clients?
Well, at Tracker, looking at our specific circumstances and our car park, we certainly do follow the trends quite closely. Last, I had mentioned that hijackings tended to happen between a Tuesday and a Thursday, from on or about 6 p.m. Now, of course, these trends change all the time as criminal syndicates change their modus operandi. One of the things that has happened, unfortunately, and 2020 was a real game changer during lockdown, is that the probability of people ordering stuff to be delivered to their homes has increased significantly. And therefore, there's been a significant spike in items being delivered in the home and home blockages at the gate as a person is about to enter their premises, increasing quite a bit in that period of time. But additionally, the old methods of being aware is so vitally important. And we advise all our customers and indeed South Africans to be aware of their surroundings. What would-be hijackers tend to do, they use your relaxed state as you're about to enter the home, as you're standing in front of your gate, waiting for your electrical gate to open, and then they block you in and impede your access. Yeah. So watching your surroundings, watching who's following you, if there's a car that's making similar turns to yourself, is one of the things that we advise. Of course, Gareth, people are not limited to just going from work to home. When you travel late at night, sharing your journey with loved ones is also of vital importance. And obviously, indicating to your loved ones, there are various apps and platforms that we have to allow our customers to share their journey with loved ones.
Stay tuned to Week in One. Coming up, Banyana Banyana are crowned the new queens of the continent, and Shoba and Dudu Myeni are back in court. Welcome back to Week in One. Let's head straight to the courts, where the mastermind behind Pule's murder, Shoba, was back in the dock this week. He was found guilty of murdering his then-pregnant girlfriend in June 2020. She was found hanging from a tree in Durban Deep in Roodepoort. eNCA has this heart-shattering story.
Mr. Shoba was the driving force behind the scheme and has done nothing since Ms. Pule's murder to merit the kind of leniency that Mr. Malapane received. Mr. Makabela did not identify any other factor that would justify a departure from the statutory penalty. He drew my attention to the year or so that Mr. Shoba has spent in pre-trial incarceration, but accepted that this could not on its own justify a departure from that penalty. Mr. Shoba, can you stand up, please? For all these reasons, Mr. Shoba, I am enjoined by the statute to apply the ordinary sentence for an offence of this nature. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison unless the parole authorities consider you fit for release in the fullness of time. Accordingly, on count 1 of the indictment, I sentence you to life imprisonment. You may sit down. Thank you. Is there anything further, Mr. Mohammed? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. The court will adjourn.
All right.
Onto this, former SAA board chairperson Dudu Myeni has been ordered to pay a fine of 120,000 rand after pleading guilty to charges of defeating the ends of justice. Myeni returned to court this week for her case related to revealing the identity of a protected witness referred to as Mr. X during a testimony at the State Capture Commission in November 2020. eNCA's Bulele Chwiti Jones has more.
That you plead guilty without any undue influence, voluntarily without any undue influence. Ms. Myeni?
An admission made by former SAA board chairperson Dudu Myeni.
Myeni was accused of revealing the identity of a state capture witness known as Mr. X in November 2020. This despite an order from the inquiry chair that his identity not be revealed. The National Prosecuting Authority has welcomed the judgment against the former SA Airport chairperson, Dudu Myeni. Myeni was initially instructed by the court to pay 125,000. However, half of the amount has now been suspended on condition Myeni does not commit the same criminal offense within the space of 5 years. She's now been instructed to pay 30,000 rand in 2 installments or face a 2-year imprisonment sentence. Myeni's legal team thinks the sentence is too harsh, despite her admitting to having acted unlawfully and defeating the administration of justice.
We were in protracted discussions with the prosecution, and what we would have ideally, for our client's benefit, hoped for a more lenient sentence, but taking into consideration the balance that has to be struck between the aggravation and the mitigation, too, taking into account the triage of sentencing.
The MPA in turn responded to the defense team unhappiness over the plea agreement.
Both parties, we sat and negotiated, and we both agreed that this is a just sentence that strikes a balance between the interest of justice, the interest of the accused, and it also have considered the seriousness of the offense she committed, as well as the interest of justice.
The MPA says it hopes sentencing will send a strong message against failing to protect witnesses in high-risk investigations. Buleli Jones in Johannesburg.
And finally, this bit of good news. Banyana Banyana were crowned the queens of the continent after they beat host Morocco to win a maiden Women's African Cup of Nations title on Saturday. After a dramatic and tightly contested final, they beat Morocco to win the match 2-1. eNCA Shonim Timkulu brings us this report.
Memories that won't soon be forgotten in women's football. A group of players who finally lifted the elusive continental title and wasted no time dedicating their history-making exploits to their supporters.
To all the South Africans back at home, this one is for you. We felt your support. We are very happy that we were able to unite the nation. We know how much of a nerve-wracking moment it was before the game and how anxious everyone was. But we're very grateful for the support, and going forward, we urge all South Africans to keep on supporting Banyana Banyana, to keep on supporting women's football.
While support for Banyana is relatively small by South African sporting standards, Saturday's victory has not gone unnoticed.
I think we are happy as a country that they won, because especially it's their first time doing this thing. And I think as a country also need to support them, because they've shown that they are capable of doing it.
I'm not sure which player it was. She was actually featured on a program on ETV. They complain about how they're not actually getting paid, how it's unfair, because with the men's football league, they get a lot of money. So I think they should really reconsider being fair in terms of that.
Well, I thought they played very well, and I'm happy that they put us on the map. We are being recognized, especially because it's Banyana Banyana representing women. Yes, I'm very happy and proud.
Conquering Africa was about the country as much as it was about the many players who were part of the Banyana story in a time when there was no league, no sponsors, and little recognition.
What we wanted to do was make sure that we do it for each other, but also for those that have come before, for the coaches that have been and the players, and obviously the coaches that coach in women's football for their contribution,
I haven't even slept an ounce, it's just been a call after a call after a call, just everybody that we've been playing with in the previous years, just to say, hey, finally, even if we were not there, but we've paved the way, and we are super, super proud of the girls.
We laid a foundation for these youngsters. So now it shows that amantombazane, the way are passionate nakhona ngefootball, We were not playing for money. We were playing for love of the game.
Hlonim Timkulu, Johannesburg.
And that's a wrap for our show for this week. From myself and the brilliant Week in One team, have a great weekend.